Hello and welcome. This is the France 24 debate. When Osama bin Laden was killed in 2011, Al-Qaeda seemed a weakened force. But after Syria bombings, are we witnessing a resurgence of Sunni radicalism in neighboring Iraq? There have been daily bombings in Baghdad at their deadliest this past year since 2007. Now, there's also what looks like a throwback to 2004. After the fall of Saddam Hussein, a mix of Sunni tribesmen and al-Qaeda-linked radicals in control of Fallujah, with fighting also reported in Ramadi, capital of the western Al-Anbar province. It started December 30th, when Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki tried to forcibly break up a year-long sit-in to protest the Shia-dominated Baghdad government's refusal to grant more autonomy to Sunni Anbar province. We're going to see how many of those that Maliki are taking on are in fact jihadists. The United States making it clear they're not sending troops back to Iraq. The U.S. Secretary of State emphatic on that point. John Kerry, though, offering assistance, putting him in the same boat as, that's right, Iran. Their common enemy, Sunni radicals, now in a three-way fight in Syria with government forces and the more moderate Free Syrian Army Rebellion. Just how powerful are those who call themselves ISIS, the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant? What's the plan to confront them? Today in the France 24 debate, the jihadist contagion. And with us to talk about it from Abu Dhabi, Hadith Al-Sayeg, senior writer for daily newspaper The National. Thanks for being with us. Welcome as well to Kirk Sowell, publisher of Inside Iraqi Politics. He joins us from Amman, Jordan. From Washington and the RAND Corporation's Alex Crowther is with us. Thank you for joining us. And here in Paris, Miriam Benrad of the European Center for Foreign Relations and former U.S. diplomat William Jordan. Happy New Year to all of you. The France 24 debate where you can join the conversation. And you have on Facebook and on Twitter our hashtag F24debate. As we said, jihadists throwing their weight around on both sides of the border, but it's really in the biggest way since the final U.S. Withdrawal of troops 2 years ago in Iraq now that we're seeing it. Olivia Salazar-Winspear has more.
For Time magazine, this is the new face of global terror. Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi is at the head of ISIS. The group was created in 2004, pledging allegiance to al-Qaeda and adopting its current name this year, an acronym of the Islamic State of Iraq and Greater Syria. Its ambitions are far-reaching. ISIS aims to unite regions in Iraq, Syria and Lebanon as a caliphate for Sunni Muslims. As a minority in Iraq, many of them feel they've been persecuted. The group's objective eschews both national boundaries, governments and opposition actors, deploying extremist strategies instead. ISIS's foothold in Iraq is growing, partially controlling two cities to the west of Baghdad, Fallujah and Ramadi in the Anbar province, the site of intense fighting with US troops during the Iraqi war. In Syria, ISIS fighters could number some 10,000 people, many of whom come from outside of the country. The Syrian Human Rights Observatory says the group is the most powerful in the north of the country right now and has been enforcing Sharia law, including reports of beheadings and torture. Its presence in war-torn Syria started in the opposition camp. Since then, ISIS has taken up arms against both pro- and anti-government factions. They've also refused alliances with other Islamist rebel groups. Their terrorist activity, however, continues apace. The group claimed responsibility for a car bomb in a Hezbollah stronghold of Beirut on Thursday. The attack killed 4 people and left dozens more injured.
Let's begin with you, Kirk Sowell. The situation right now in Fallujah this Monday, we saw in that report how this group has been creeping up there. There have been claims that ISIS is no longer in control of Fallujah. What are you hearing?
Let me just start by clarifying one point. I understand that there were a range of international media outlets that reported that al-Qaeda or ISIS was in complete control of Fallujah for a period. In fact, they were never in total control. What they did was they ran some their Toyota trucks with guys with machine guns and black flags in. They took over a major protest stand. They took over the police station. They've now lost that. But even several days ago, when many were reporting that they were completely in control in Fallujah, in fact, they only just controlled limited areas. And the confusion really comes from the fact that the government calls every group they're fighting, including nationalist insurgents groups, Al-Qaeda, and a lot of media outlets went with that. At this point, it looks like the local police, backed by local tribes, are pretty much entirely in control. ISIS is really obvious. They have, they have distinctive clothing. They have flags. They're very open, and you can distinguish them from sort of ordinary Iraqi Sunni nationalist insurgents. And at this point, it's essentially the local police and the local tribes that are in control, not the federal government, but also not Al-Qaeda.
And how many of these ISIS fighters are there?
Well, if we're talking about just Iraq, it's probably about the same number as 6 or 7 years ago when U.S. troops were there. So single-digit thousands, 5, 6, 7,000. Just from the videos they published, they sent several hundred guys into both Ramadi, the provincial capital, as well as Fallujah. But Fallujah is a city of 350,000 people, where people are very well armed. Ordinary men have guns. They were never going to take over the whole city.
How many of them are in fact from Fallujah?
No one knows. They're very secretive. They are an Iraqi organization, though. Unlike early on in 2003, 2004, when Abu Musab al-Zarqawi was heading it, it was a non-Iraqi organization originally. Over time, they have Iraqified, if you will. For example, their leader or emir in Anbar, Abu Wahib, he's actually from Salahuddin, so he's Iraqi, but he's from a different province. So I imagine, I know some of them are from Fallujah, but I can't give you a number.
Alex Crowther, this brings back the question that people always ask, which is, we use especially in the media, we use the word Al-Qaeda a bit loosely. Are these people, when they give themselves, in this particular case, they don't even have the name Al-Qaeda in the description of their group, but how much of this is local and how much of this is organized on a, shall we say, supranational level?
Well, most of it is Sunni tribespeople who are unhappy with al-Maliki. Maliki started to suppress the Sunnis as the United States was pulling out in December of 2011, seeking to arrest the Vice President al-Hashemi. A year ago, arresting several prominent leaders, and then last month taking in the Sunni parliamentarian Ahmed al-Awlani. So this is a reaction mainly of the local Sunnis that ISIS is taking advantage of.
Do you agree, Miriam Benrad, that this is the train of events that's happened?
Well, first I would like to bring some elements about the insurgents. Who are the insurgents? The Islamic State of Iraq, which in April 2013 became the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant through the solidarity between the Iraqi fighters and the Syrian branch of Al-Qaeda, are all Salafists who've been basically gaining ground through the fact that the nationalist trend of the Iraqi insurgency lost credit, lost legitimacy in the eyes of many Iraqis, through the fact that the Sunnis were marginalized from the national center of power and now are multiplying calls towards territorial separation, which gives ground to the pan-Islamic and transnational project of Al-Qaeda, so the Islamic State of Iraq, which also claims to bring, to offer the Sunnis the only political alternative to what has been for a decade political marginalization from Baghdad, from the political arena. And there have been projects of autonomy, regional autonomy, which were rejected by al-Maliki. So this whole context, these different factors have fed long-term, long-standing resentment among the Sunnis, and of course paved the way for a radicalization of Sunni minds, which has allowed Al-Qaeda to take over. But the Sunni landscape is very fragmented, such as it is in Syria, with, again, the Salafist trend, which is gaining ground, and then some tribes which somehow are a third actor of the conflict. Some of them are aligned on Al-Qaeda. Others are now fighting with the Iraqi army and security forces with al-Maliki, which they consider as, basically less dangerous than Al-Qaeda for their own interests in their regions. And you do have still some nationalist insurgents, but again, who have lost weight over the years, and the fact that the Sunnis less and less believe in a national reconciliation process, in the fact that they will come back to Baghdad and have a new say in the political process. So
the level of mistrust growing. This Monday, there was no government offensive in Fallujah. Some claim because the government was unable to do so. Others, and the Prime Minister himself, Nouri al-Maliki, saying he wants to avoid a bloodbath. He directly addressed local militias who've also been pushing out those forces.
I'm calling on those who are deluding themselves to reconsider. They have been involved without knowing in supporting al-Qaeda projects and protecting it in several ways, including giving media and political support. Now they are responsible for the consequences that our forces face as they fight criminals and killers.
Adil al-Sayegh, do you agree with Iraq's Prime Minister that the local tribes and militias have responsibility to bear for this incursion by jihadists?
I disagree. I think Maliki's policies have directly have made the situation in Iraq in quite a dire state. To a certain extent, it seems like he's trying to remove some of his own responsibilities or just kind of guilt that or responsibility other people place on him. However, it seems like this is Maliki trying to kind of take advantage of perhaps the one last chance that he has in order to win the support of the Sunnis ahead of the legislative elections that are going to be taking place this year.
Do you think that he's not intervening? Do you take at face value he's not intervening because he wants to avoid a bloodbath?
I think he's trying to make a distinction to win the hearts of the people in Fallujah and in Ramadi, to say that you guys are not responsible. What we are worried about are the militants who have been supporting ISIS.
When we, at the outset of all this, as we said at the top, William Jordan, there was the breakup of a sit-in that had been going on for a year against the fact that there's too much centralization in field the Sunnis who live in Anbar province, and then the arrest of this prominent opposition politician, a bloody arrest, since there were 18 people killed, I believe, during that arrest. Has Maliki lost the plot to a certain degree?
Well, again, I'm not so much an expert on what's going on internally in Iraq, but I mean the perception that I have is that Maliki has, in many ways, played a very strong authoritarian card to reestablish a high degree of central authority from Baghdad, and in order to consolidate his own position, has done so via marginalization of the Sunnis, and in many ways he has decided to almost play this very much in his own way, exclusive of perhaps even the advice of some of his own advisors, for reasons that are probably best known for him, in order to maintain control and to pursue a national project, again, based very much not on entirely sectarian logic, but based on the idea of centralizing authority in his hands and in the hands of his office, in order to impose some sort of a national project on Iraq.
All right. So the strategy, in any case, leading to this flare-up. Kirk Sowell, We had our correspondent in Baghdad on at the end of last week describing what a daily horror it is for residents of Baghdad who just want to go out and do their grocery shopping under the circumstances with these random terror bombings that are going on. Do you find it understandable that the central authorities in Baghdad might use a heavy hand?
Yes. However, you need to attack in the right spot. So if you go back to December 21st, last month, what happened is that Maliki did have the 7th Division of the Iraqi Army was out in Western Anbar in an operation, and then there was essentially a bombing of officers were killed. He launched a broad operation in Western and Northern Anbar against Al Qaeda, where they got bases out there. And these operations had very strong support, not only from Shia, who of course would support this, but many Sunnis as well. For example, the Anbar Tribal Council spoke out in favor of it. Other Maliki critics who are Sunni spoke out in favor of these operations. Then Maliki made a mistake. The city, the so-called Pride Dig Square, and that.
Oh, I'm sorry, Kirk. It seems as though the connection with Amman Jordan is breaking up slightly. We're going to try to fix that right away. We're going to pick up on this point when we come back and look at international reaction. You're watching the France 24 debate.